High School's production of Margaret Atwood's The Penelopiad Act. Thank you for joining us. Before we get started, we have a few brief reminders. Remember to silence any noise-making devices like phones, watches, and babies. We ask for you to refrain from the use of flash photography as to not startle our very delicate actors. Also, we do not allow food or drink in the theater. Water is permitted, and you can snack all you want at intermission. One last reminder that this show contains mature content and language and is suggested for ages 13 and up. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Now that I'm dead, I know everything. This is what I wished would happen, but like so many of my wishes, it's failed to come true. I know only a few factoids I didn't know before. Death is much too high a price to pay for the satisfaction of curiosity, needless to say. Since being dead, since achieving this state of bonelessness, liplessness, breastlessness, I've learned some things I would rather not know, as one does when listening at windows or opening other people's letters. You think you'd like to read minds? Think again. Down here, everyone arrives with a sack, like the sacks used to keep the winds in, but these sacks are full of words. Words you've spoken, words you've heard, words that have been said about you. Some sacks are very small, others large. My own is of a reasonable size, although most of the words in it concern my eminent husband. What a fool he made of me, some say. That was a specialty of his, making fools. He got away with everything, which was another of his specialties, getting away. He was always so plausible. Most people believed that his version of the story was the true one. Give or take a few murders, a few beautiful seductresses, a few one-eyed monsters. But I like to think that he never played his tricks on me. For hadn't I been faithful? Didn't I wait and wait and wait, despite the temptation, almost the compulsion to do otherwise? And yet, what have I amounted to now the official version has gained ground? An edifying legend. A stick used to beat other women with. Why couldn't they be as considerate, as trustworthy, as all-suffering as I was? That's the line they take. The singers, the yarn spinners. Don't follow by my example. I want to scream it in your ears. Yes, yours. But when I try to scream, I sound like an owl.
We are the maids, the ones you killed, the ones you failed. We danced on air, our bare feet twitched. It was not fair. With every goddess, queen, and bitch, from there to here, you scratched your itch. We did much less than what you did. You judged us bad. You had the spear, you had the word at your command. You scrubbed the blood of our dead paramours from floors, from chairs, from stairs, from doors. We knelt in water while you stared.
At our bare feet,
It was not fair. You licked our fear. It gave you pleasure. You raised your hand.
you watched us fall.
We danced on air. The ones you failed. The ones you killed.
Turned a blind eye back then. When I was alive, I didn't ask awkward questions. I didn't dig deep. I wanted happy endings, and happy endings are best achieved by keeping your mouth shut and the right doors locked. Once I was dead, they turned me into a story, although not the kind of story I would have preferred to hear. I waited some more. Now that all the others have run out of air, it's my turn. Once, people would have laughed if I tried to play the minstrel. There's nothing more preposterous than an aristocrat fumbling around with the arts. But who cares about public opinion now? The opinion of shadows, of echoes. So I'll spin a thread of my own. Where shall I begin? My father was King Icarius of Sparta. My mother was a naiad. Daughters of naiads were a dime a dozen back then. The place was crawling with them. Nevertheless, it never hurts to be of semi-divine birth. Or it never hurts immediately.
What's it saying?
You have a very young child, a daughter.
Yes?
The gods have given her intelligence and a faithful and patient nature.
Good.
She will weave her father's shroud.
Her father's shroud?
Father-in-law, something, father.
She'll kill me?
It's not totally clear. The gods are.
She'll kill me.
The divine snake has spoken.
Bring Penelope! Throw her into the sea.
But she's only a child.
Do as I say! Drown her!
Luckily, I was rescued by a flock of purple-striped ducks and towed ashore.
What's all this noise? Purple striped ducks? Must be an omen. She lives. My ducky lives. The gods have spoken.
And so, I became known as Ducky. Perhaps I've only invented this oracle story in order to make myself feel better. So much whispering goes on down here in the dark caverns and the meadows that it's hard to know whether the whispering is coming from others or from the inside of your own head. I use head figuratively. We have dispensed with heads as such down here. But it was stupid of Icarius to try to drown the daughter of a naiad. Water is our element. It is our birthright. Although we are not such good swimmers as our mothers, we do have a way of floating and are well connected among the fish and seabirds. My mother, like all naiads, was beautiful, but chilly at heart. She had waving hair and dimples and rippling laughter. She was elusive. When I was little, I often tried to throw my arms around her, but she had a habit of sliding away. I like to think that she may have been responsible for calling up the flock of ducks that day, but probably she wasn't. She preferred swimming in the rivers to the care of small children, and I often slipped her mind. If my father hadn't thrown me into the sea that day, she might have dropped me in herself in a fit of absent-mindedness or irritation. She had a short attention span and rapidly changing emotions. Have I forgotten to tell you? She had rather small, pointed teeth. Being thrown into the sea did not improve my relations with my father. There I would be, strolling hand in hand with my apparently fond male parent along a cliff edge, or riverbank, or parapet, and the thought would occur to me that he might suddenly decide to shove me over or bash me to death with a rock. It is to this episode that I attribute my reserve, as well as my mistrust of other people's intentions. I was a child who learned early on not nymphs or naiads.
We were set to work in the palace. As children, we drudged from dawn to dusk. As children, if we wept, no one dried our tears.
If we slept, we were kicked awake. We were told we were motherless.
We were told we were fatherless. We were told we were lazy.
We were told we were dirty.
We were dirty. Dirt was our concern. Dirt was our business. Dirt was our specialty. Dirt was our fault. We were the dirty girls.
If our owners,
We're the sons of our owners.
were a visiting nobleman, or the sons of a visiting nobleman wanted to sleep with us,
We could not refuse.
It did us no good to weep.
It did us no good to say we were in pain.
all this happened to us when we were children.
And if we were pretty children,
Our lives were worse.
We ground the flour for lavish wedding feasts.
Then we ate the leftovers. We would never have a wedding feast of our own.
no rich gifts would be exchanged for us.
Our bodies had little value. But we wanted to sing and dance too.
We wanted to be happy too. As we grew older, we became polished and evasive.
We mastered the secret sneer.
We swayed our hips.
We lurked. We winked.
We signaled with our eyebrows.
Even as children, we met boys behind the pig pens, noble and ignoble boys alike.
We rolled around in the straw, in the mud, in the dung, in the beds of soft fleece we were making up for our masters.
We drank the wine left in the wine cups. We spat onto the serving platters. Between the bright hall and the dark scullery, we crammed filched meat into our mouths.
We laughed together in our attics, in our nights.
We snatched what we could. It's dark down here, many have remarked. Dark death, they say, or the gloomy halls of Hades. This is true, but one can always take a walk through the fields of Asphodel. It's brighter there, and a certain amount of vapid dancing goes on, though the region sounds better than it is. The fields of Asphodel has a poetic lilt to it, and while the white flowers are pretty enough, a person soon grows tired of them. I would have preferred an assortment of colors, a few winding paths and vistas and stone benches and fountains, perhaps a Mount Hyacinth or a sprinkling of crocuses. Though we never get spring here, or any other season for that matter. But I shouldn't complain. Every now and then, the fogs part, and we catch a glimpse of the world of the living. It's kind of like rubbing the glass on a dirty window, making a space to look through. Sometimes the barrier dissolves and we can go on an outing. Then we get very excited and there is a great deal of squeaking. The difficulty is that I have no mouth through which I can speak. I cannot make myself understood, not in your world, the world of bodies and tongues and fingers. And most of the time, I have no listeners, not on your side of the river. Those of you who may catch the odd squeak, the odd whisper, so often confuse my words for dry reeds rustling, for bats squeaking at twilight, for bad dreams. But I've always been of a determined nature. Patient, they used to call me. I like to see a thing through to the end. My marriage was arranged.
Marriages are for having children.
And children are not toys and pets.
Children are vehicles for passing things along.
Kingdoms,
Wedding gifts,
Loot, stories,
friendship.
Through children, alliances are forged.
Through children, wrongs are avenged.
to have a child is to set loose a force in the world.
And if you have an enemy, it's best to kill his sons.
For as long as they are alive, they are a danger to you.
If you have daughters instead of sons, it's best to get them married off as soon as possible so you can have grandsons. The more sword wielders and spear throwers you can count within your own family, the better. In my court, we honor the ancient tradition of holding an athletic contest to determine a suitable match. And so, whoever wins the foot race wins my daughter's hand in marriage and a substantial dowry.
So, my fellow noblemen, drinks before the race.
Drinks will be minor afterwards. You can all count on that. You're not running in those sandals. Apollonius, you put on weight. Eating well?
I love you madly. For
you, I'd give my life so gladly. Thy beauteous nose is like a rose.
It's a hot day. Drink up.
Who's the barrel-chested one?
Oh, that's only Odysseus.
From Ithaca.
Ithaca?
Some god-forsaken goat-strewn rock.
What is he wearing?
He looks like a goat herd.
And a cheat. And a thief. Just like his grandfather, Autolycus.
They say he's very clever, though. Too clever for his own good.
I wonder how fast he can run.
Not very fast with those short legs of his.
Maybe his legs only seem short because we're looking down at him.
He'll tell you the size of his legs doesn't matter. But you know what they say about short legs.
What? Tiny fingers.
Oh, bless her, she's only a kid.
So he'll know just how to deal with her.
She'll be bleeding soon enough, like a goat to the slaughter.
It really hurts.
Like having your insides torn apart.
You'll cry.
You'll scream.
You'll bleed.
You'll beg for more. What's the big joke?
Princess Helen, we were only talking about Odysseus.
Indeed. I think Odysseus would make a very suitable husband for our little ducky. She likes the quiet life after all, and she'll certainly have that if he takes her to Ithaca, as he's boasting of doing. You could help him look after his goats. I think you'd look quite sweet together. You both have such short legs. Never mind now, little cousin. They say he's very clever. And you're very clever too, they tell me. So at least you'll be able to understand what he says. I certainly never could. It's lucky for both of us that he didn't win me.
Gentlemen, on your marks.
They're all looking at Helen. She knows how to mount their knees.
Get set.
Her husband looks furious.
Menelaus, he's so loud.
But he's so rich. Oh!
They're running well.
But they're slowing down on the far side.
They're really slowing down. What's happening?
Odysseus is going strong.
He's overtaking. He's in the lead.
The gods have favored Odysseus. Princess Penelope, it's time for your wedding.
I had trouble making it through the ceremony. The sacrifices of animals, the offerings to the gods, the lustral sprinklings, the libations, the prayers, the interminable songs. I felt quite dizzy. I kept my eyes downcast, so all I could see of Odysseus was the lower part of his body. Short legs, I kept thinking to myself, even in the most solemn moments. This was not an appropriate thought. It was trivial and it was silly and it made me want to giggle. But in my own defense, I was only 15. And so I was handed over to Odysseus like a package of meat, a sort of gilded blood pudding.
Penelope, my child,
Yes, Mother.
remember this. Water does not resist. Water flows. When you plunge your hand into it, all you feel is a caress. For water is not a solid wall and will not stop you. Water always goes where it wants to go, and nothing in the end can stand against it. Water is patient. Dripping water wears away a stone. Remember that, my child. Remember that you are half water. If you can't go through an obstacle, go around it. Water does.
A toast to my wife, the fair and intelligent Penelope.
The fair and intelligent Penelope.
Your cup is empty, sir. May I fill it?
If a man lives by his wits, as I do, he needs to have those wits always close at hand, and kept sharp like axes or swords. Only fools are given to bragging about how much they can drink.
He cheated. Short legs, nothing but goats. All he wanted was my little ducky, and now he's taking her away.
I I could hardly eat a thing. I was too nervous. I was certain that Odysseus would be disappointed in me once he made his way in through the shimmering robe. But he wasn't looking at me, and neither was anyone else. They were all staring at Helen, who was intolerably beautiful as usual. Like every other man on earth, Odysseus had desperately wanted to win her hand. I was at best only second prize, and although mine was the marriage in question, Helen wanted all the attention for herself. I suspect she used to flirt with her dog, with her comb, with her mirror, with her bedpost. She needed to keep in practice. But in a way, it was lucky that she was distracting everyone's attention, because it kept them from noticing me and my trembling and awkwardness. I wasn't just nervous. I was terrified.
Come over here. Forget everything you've been told. I'm not going to hurt you, or not very much. Still, it would help us both if you could pretend a little. I'm told you're a clever girl. Do you think you can manage a few screams? That'll satisfy them. They're waiting at the door, and then they'll leave us in peace, and we can take our time and become friends.
Persuader. He could convince anyone that together they faced a common obstacle and that only together could they overcome it. He could draw in almost any listener into a little collaboration, a conspiracy of his own making. Nobody could do this better than he. For once, the stories don't lie. But somewhat later, I found that Odysseus is not one of those men who, after the act, simply roll over and begin to snore. No, Odysseus wanted to talk, and as he was an excellent raconteur, I was happy to listen. He told me many stories about his exploits and looting expeditions, and how he'd always been favored by the goddess Athena because of his inventive mind and skill at disguises. He told me about the long scar on his thigh, and he told me how he came by it. He'd been savaged by a ferocious boar while hunting, and how after a tremendous battle he managed to kill the boar. He told me about his special bow that nobody but he could string, and how he could shoot an arrow through 12 round axe heads, an astonishing feat. In return, I told him the story of my own near drowning. Well, he told me he would never so much as think of drowning such a precious girl as me. And so, by the time the morning came, I found I developed friendly feelings towards Odysseus. More than that, loving and passionate feelings, and he behaved as if he reciprocated them. And so when, a few days later, he announced his intention of taking me and my dowry back with him to Ithaca, I was only too pleased to go.
If I was a princess with silver and gold, and loved by a hero, I'd never grow old. Oh, if I
directing the ship. I gained a great opinion of Odysseus since our wedding night, and I admired him immensely. As we drew closer, I could see that the harbor at Ithaca was surrounded by steep rocky cliffs, thickly sprinkled with goats.
Ithaca! Ithaca!
Drop the sails, prepare to land. This is my father, King Laertes, and my mother, Queen Eteoclea. Mother, father, may I present my wife, Penelope, Princess of Sparta, future Queen of Ithaca, and cousin to the famous Helen.
Welcome, Princess Penelope. I trust you will be very happy here.
Yes, yes. She's certainly very young.
A fault that will correct itself in time.
Very young and sickly looking. I fear she'll die soon.
Penelope, this is my beloved old nurse, Euryclea. She's been in the house ever since my father bought her, 30 years ago.
And you never laid a finger on me. Imagine that. I was very good looking, but he always respected me greatly.
It wasn't respect. He was afraid of his wife. That Anticlea would freeze the balls off Helios.
Beloved master, I'm overjoyed that you've returned safely. I've kept everything just as you wanted it.
I can always depend on you.
Now, girls, back to your chores. You just come along with me, my dear. I'm the one to show you how things are done around here in Ithaca. And nobody knows Odysseus the way I do. For didn't I nurse him as a baby, bring him up as a youth, and tend to the awful wound he got in his thigh from the wild boar that time? He's still got the scar. But I'm sure you've seen it. I know exactly how he likes his things, his breakfast, his bath, his robes, well, every little detail. You can just leave all that to me. Now, we've got to fatten you up so you can have a nice big son for Odysseus. That's your job.
He sailed the wine-red seas of his mother's blood. Out of the cave of dreaded night, of sleep, of troubling dreams he sailed. In his frail dark boat, the boat of himself. Through the dangerous ocean of his vast mother he sailed. Into the caves where the threads of men's lives are spun, then measured, then cut short. By the three fatal sisters intent on their gruesome handcraft. And the threads of women's lives are also twisted into this strand.
And we, who were later to die by his hand, and his father's relentless command, sailed as well in the dark, frail boats of ourselves, through the turbulent seas of our swollen and sore-footed mothers, who were not royal queens, but a motley and piebald collection, bought, traded, captured, and kidnapped from serfs and strangers.
After the 9-month voyage, we came to shore, beached at the same time he was, struck by the hostile air. Infants, as he was an infant, wailing just as he wailed, helpless, as he was helpless, but 10 times more helpless as well, for his birth was longed for and feasted, and ours were not. We were his pets and his toy things, mock sisters, his tiny companions. We grew as he grew, laughed also, ran as he ran, though sandier, hungrier, sun-speckled, and most days meatless. He saw us as rightfully his, for whatever purpose he chose, to tend him and feed him, wash him, amuse him, rock him to sleep in the dangerous boats of ourselves.
If
we had known what the fates knew, would we have drowned him back then? 6 against 1, he wouldn't have stood a chance. Would we? In only a moment when nobody else was looking. Pushed his still innocent child's head underneath the water with our own still innocent childish nursemaid hands and blamed it on waves. Would we have had it in us? Ask the 3 sisters, spinning their blood-red mazes, tangling the lives of men and women together. Only they know our hearts. From us, you will get no answer.
Look, a perfect little prince. Oh, you lie down, child. I'll take over from here. Oh.
Proud of you, my little daughter. Even Helen hasn't born a son yet.
Why was he always thinking about Helen? I had little authority in my new home. Euryclea and my mother-in-law ran all domestic matters. Odysseus ran the kingdom, naturally, with his father, Laertes, sticking in his oar from time to time. It was the standard family push and pull over whose word was to carry the most weight. All were agreed on one thing, however. It wasn't mine. Good evening, ma'am. It was quite windy today.
It's always windy in Ithaca.
I went for a walk along the cliffs.
I hope she was accompanied.
Mother, she's always accompanied. You know that.
A king's wife is under constant scrutiny.
One of the goats had triplets.
I know.
We'll have to eat the 3rd one. She won't nurse it.
I know.
And the pear trees need pruning.
Odysseus is often far too busy for domestic chores, sir. People travel far and wide to seek his advice. He's famous for solving problems.
My father doesn't approve of my problem solving.
Euryclea, how is my grandson?
He's thriving, my lady. He said his first word today.
He did?
He did. He said, Mama. And he said it to me. Oh, he's calling me now. No, I'll go. You're barely more than a child yourself. I'll tend to the little darling. You stay here and enjoy yourself.
But I didn't know how to do that. My days in the palace were lonely. I had no friend of my own age and station and very little to occupy myself with. Sometimes I would sit in the courtyard twisting wool into thread and listening to the maids as they went about their chores. When it was raining, I would take up my weaving in the women's quarters. There at least I would have some company, as there were always a number of slaves at work on the looms. But my days in Ithaca were mostly spent in anticipation of evenings in bed with Odysseus.
Have I told you the secret about this bed?
I love to hear secrets.
This is a very, very special bed. That bedpost there, whittled it by hand from an olive tree, with its living roots still in the ground. Nobody will ever be able to move or displace this bed. If word gets around about the secret of my post, although you've been sleeping with some other man, and then
I shall be very cross indeed. And I'll have to chop you into little pieces with my sword.
I would never, ever think of betraying your great big post.
Good girl. Because I find you out. Every person has a hidden door, a secret way into their heart. And it's my special gift to be able to find and open it. He who is on his way to mastering the hearts of man is well on his way to mastering the fates as well, and controlling the thread of his own destiny.
Do I have a door into my heart? And have you found it?
That is for you to tell me.
Well, what about the door into your heart? Have I found the key to that?
Ahoy there! A boat. It's not one I know.
Are you expecting news?
I'm always expecting news.
Everyone was talking about it in the harbor. Helen of Sparta, my married cousin Helen, had run away with Paris of Troy. Paris was the younger son of King Priam and was known to be very good-looking. Apparently, it was love at first sight. For 9 days of feasting, laid on by Menelaus, Paris and Helen had made moon eyes at each other behind the back of Menelaus, who hadn't noticed a thing. This didn't surprise me, because the man was as thick as a brick and had the manners of a stump. Then, when he had to go away on a trip, the two of them loaded up Paris and Helen's ship with as much gold and silver as they could carry and eloped together.
Let me do that.
Leave us!
Odysseus, what's happened? What are you doing? Where are you going?
I have to go to Troy,
Troy, why?
because I have sworn an oath.
What oath?
An oath concerning the husband of Helen. Every man who swore it now has to sail off to Troy and defend Menelaus' rights and wage war and get Helen back.
But surely you don't have to go.
I swore the oath. In fact, it was my idea in the first place.
But what about me?
An oracle decreed that Troy cannot be saved without my help.
But what about your son?
You must be brave.
You'll have to be clever, too.
Helen. Wicked cousin Helen. Helen the lovely. Helen the irresistible. Helen the septic bitch, root of all my misfortunes. Helen should have been locked in a box in a dark cellar where no one could get to her because she was poison on legs. Then everything would have been fine. What can I tell you about the next 10 years? Odysseus sailed away to Troy. I stayed in Ithaca. The sun rose, traveled across the sky, set. Only sometimes did I think of it as the flaming chariot of Helios. The moon did the same, changing from phase to phase. Only sometimes did I think of it as the silver boat of Artemis. Spring, summer, fall, winter followed one another in their appointed rounds. Quite often a wind blew. My mother-in-law, Queen Anticlea, wrinkled up like drying mud and then died, sickened by an excess of waiting and convinced her son would never return home. My father-in-law, Laertes, retreated into the countryside, where he was seen shambling here and there in grubby clothing and muttering about pear trees.
Pear trees.
my pet. It's time for your dinner. Then you can have a lovely bath and a comforting bedtime drink. Now, say goodnight to your mommy, my little woolly poo.
Oh. Euroclea, you're spoiling him.
He deserves it. He's going to be king one day.
As the twig is bent, so will the tree grow.
We wouldn't want to bend that little twiggy now, would we? Oh, nosy, nosy, no. We want him to grow big and tall so we can get all the juicy goodness out of this nice big chunk of meat without a rough patch mommy coming in and making everybody all sad.
Oh, you're the boy. During the days I had work to do, I was now running the kingdom all by myself. In no way had I been prepared for such a task during my early life at Sparta, so in the kingdom of Ithaca, I had to learn from scratch. But learn I did. My policy was to build up the stuff of Odysseus so that he'd have more when he returned than he'd had when he left. More sheep, more cows, more pigs, more fields of grain, more slaves. I often dreamt of the day that he would return and how I, with womanly modesty, would reveal how well I'd done it, what is usually considered a man's business. How his face would shine with pleasure. You're worth 1,000 Helens, he would say. Wouldn't he? And then he'd clasp me tenderly in his arms. We had news of how the war with Troy was going. Sometimes well, sometimes badly. Minstrels sang songs about notable heroes, but I waited only for news of Odysseus. I relished those moments. There he was, making an inspiring speech. There he was, uniting quarreling factions. There he was, concocting an astonishing falsehood. There he was, disguising himself as a runaway slave and sneaking into Troy and speaking with Helen herself, who, the song proclaimed, had bathed and anointed him with her very own hands. I wasn't so fond of that part. But then, finally, after 10 long years, the news flashed from beacon to beacon. Troy had fallen. Athena be thanked.
They say it was Odysseus. The walls of Troy were high and thick. No warrior could take them by force. But my Odysseus fooled those Trojans.
With a wooden horse. It was hollow.
He said it was an offering to the gods, but it was stuck full of Greek soldiers.
With swords and spears, and the Trojans wheeled the horse inside the city walls. And when darkness fell,
the streets ran red with blood.
The sky above the palace turned to fire.
the Trojan women were raped. The tender young girls.
Then they were shackled together to be shipped away as slaves.
The innocent boy children were thrown from a cliff. Their mangled bodies.
Stop it!
That's what happens when you lose a war.
The Greek ships have set sail for Ithaca. They'll soon be home now. My dear master.
Day after day, I waited. I climbed up to the top floor of the palace and I'd sit looking out over the harbor. Day after day. There was no sign. Sometimes there were ships, though never the ship I longed to see. But the ships brought rumors, and any rumor was better than none, so I listened avidly to them all.
Oh, wily Odysseus, he set out from Troy.
His boat full of booze and his heart full of
Oh,
joy.
he was Athena's own shiny-eyed boy.
His lies and his tricks and his thieving.
Oh, his first port of call was the sweet floated shore.
We sailors took on to forget the foul war.
But we soon were hauled off on the black ships once more.
Although we were pining and grieving.
up her cakes and he drank up her wine.
For here he became her blithe lodger.
Although he made love till he nearly went blind.
The goddess curvaceous and sexy and bold.
And he kept sweet Penelope ever in mind.
Tis she that does send his horse away. So I'll have to our captain where he may roam. Toss here and toss there, all the while she told.
And he's in no hurry to